It's been a big year in banking, and next year could be bigger.
This is our opportunity to power up Kiwibank to take on the Aussies, and we are up for it.
Kiwibank could get $500 million to become a disruptor.
Kiwibank's really ready to build on its momentum and to offer even more competitive products and services.
But what if that's not the way? What if it's neobanks? In this episode, we look across the ditch where an Aussie disruptor's neobank gets lots of love.
I'm walking down the street and people are high-fiving me. That's pretty unusual for a bank.
And we talk to a European neobank that wants to get its hands on a Kiwi banking licence. Welcome to the NBR Podcast. I'm your host, Simon Shepherd. Commerce Commission reviews Select Committee inquiries, and this week, threats from the Finance Minister.
If they don't step up, we have a range of regulatory, legislative and policy tools at our disposal, and we're prepared to use them.
Banking disruption is coming in 2025. A lot of attention has focused on Kiwibank, but there are already other potential Kiwi digital disruptors in the market. Payment startups like Emerge, Debut and
I'll pay now. You can dosh me later.
Yes, Dosh, which has already applied for a banking licence. It's a category called neobanks, and in Australia is a very successful one.
Welcome to Easy Money.
The bank is called Up, and its co-founder is Dom Pym. So Kiwis don't know you, but in Australia you co-founded Up. And it's what's known as a neobank. What is a neobank?
I mean, I think it's generally just a new bank, but using technology to deliver banking services rather than sort of traditional branches and, humans in a call centre sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. Digital only. That's the way.
That's it.
You've been hugely successful, or Up Bank, as it were, has been hugely successful. What do you put that down to?
Well, I think that I call it the excellence of everything. It's a matter of having great technology, being able to build trust with consumers, being able to deliver services that have never been seen in market before, but also having the ability to do new things. So often we breaking new ground, disrupting the status quo, doing things that other banks haven't even thought of doing yet, and we find ourselves in a position where Up is now the most loved bank in Australia. So it's one thing to say you're the number one bank, which we are too. But it's another to say that you're trusted, and then to say that people actually love you. And I'm walking down the street and people are high-fiving me. That's pretty unusual for a bank.
That is very unusual. I don't think anybody in New Zealand has high-fived the co-founder of a bank walking down the street. You say you're the number one bank. What do you measure that on?
Oh, there's lots of different ways to measure it, but one is growth, so fastest growing bank. Another is in the App Store and the Google Play Store. We've been the number one rated Australian bank for the last 6 years. Right.
1 million customers, is that right? It's up to
we cracked over. Yeah, we cracked over 1 million. I think for us, it's about building dominant market share amongst the younger generation of Australians. So most of our customers are under 35, which means that there's an opportunity to really target around sort of 8 million-ish of them, and so 1 million is a really good start for us.
Good start. Another 7 million to go. Okay, so you're appealing to that younger tech-savvy audience. Is it just that and the ease of using digital platforms that appeals to them, or are you actually making it cheaper and easier?
I think easier is our target. We have a bit of a philosophy that if it's the cheapest or you're offering the highest rate, then you end up with a lot of churn. You end up with customers that just move from one bank to the next bank. So for us, it's about being competitive. We're always very competitive. We don't have any hidden fees, but if we do have a fee, we announce it transparently. Our idea is that you get, through financial literacy and financial well-being, you get more from your money rather than worrying too much about the price of what it costs to do your banking.
Right. So you're creating a community. That's what you've set out to do.
Yeah, so we call our customers upsiders.
Okay.
And that's why they're high-fiving you down the street. But, whether you're on social media or whether you're face-to-face or whether you're at an event, I think building that camaraderie, building the community of people that are able to help others. So just for example, we do crowdsourcing in order to identify merchants. That means that upsiders are helping other upsiders get a better experience with their banking.
Right. Let's talk about how you did it, though. I mean, you did this by partnering with a smaller traditional bank called Bendigo Bank in Australia. Now, I mean, you've been in the banking payments software development system for a long time, but this is your path to actually creating a new bank. Was that easier to do it that way than just try and start a fintech bank from scratch?
I mean, in Australia, the regulations were really rather stringent, and you couldn't start a bank with, hundreds of millions in capital and a banking license. Of course, we didn't have a banking license, but there were other restrictions that were causing issues. So, for example, not being able to own more than a certain percentage of the bank. When you start a new fintech, you might have 2 co-founders or 3 co-founders, so you own most of the company. So for us, the regulations were so prohibitive that we thought, well, how are we going to do it? And we spent about a year working with the regulators and working with Bendigo, coming up with a structure where we were able to do an unincorporated joint venture to create a partnership between Bendigo and our company, Ferocia, so that we were a software company, so that we were able to operate as a bank without being licensed as a bank because Bendigo held the license. We did learn very quickly that you can't borrow a banking license. You've really got to, operate under the banking license, and you have to meet all the obligations obviously required by the regulations.
So you are going into a marketplace which is dominated by the big 4 Aussie banks. We have that same marketplace here. Our ecosystem is dominated by those banks. How hard, because of the regulation and because of that dominant position of those banks, was it to get into market for Up? And are there any lessons for New Zealand?
Yeah, well, I think there are lessons. For us, the way I look at it is rather than seeing it as being dominated by the big banks, we just see it as setting the bar slightly higher. So if you're in the UK or you're in America, the banks were just rubbish. So to build a competing neobank was awesome, but it was also a lower bar in order to beat them.
Right.
In Australia and New Zealand, the bar is so high. They've got great internet banking systems. They've got great mobile banking systems. They've got plenty of cash and marketing everywhere. So the question is, how do you compete with them on their own turf? And for us, it was actually innovation, disruption, creativity, doing new things that they've never done before. And so we were able to beat them at their own game by being more technically savvy and using the latest technology right at the bleeding edge in order to deliver those banking services.
So is that the possibility in New Zealand? We are talking endlessly about disrupting the status quo here. We've had the Commerce Commission talk about it and has done its personal banking review. Do you see what you've done in Australia being applicable to what we're trying to do here?
Yeah, 100%. For us, the motivation was Bank Simple in the US and Monzo in the UK.
Yep.
And they were able to provide a leading indicator for us to say, well, we want to do that in Australia. Now New Zealand has the same opportunity. And we talk about, number 8 wire and, the entrepreneurial spirit in New Zealand and the ability for New Zealanders to go up against the big guy and, chop down that tall poppy.
Yeah.
So I think that, there definitely is, a spirit there. And if you look to Up as an example and some of the other neobanks that launched in Australia, absolutely, I think we'll see in the next year or two emerging a few neobanks in New Zealand.
As we mentioned before, Kiwi payment startup Dosh has already applied for a banking licence. But now there is another applicant.
Revolut your way into currency exchange.
The massive international payments app, Revolut. It has 50 million customers worldwide and launched in New Zealand in July 2023.
So Revolut is building the world's first truly global bank where you can manage everything related to your money. So your banking, your payments, investing, and more, no matter what corner of the globe you're in, all through one single app.
Georgia Grange is head of Revolut's New Zealand operations. At the moment, you offer payments, money transfers, foreign exchange services. Are you also offering like crypto trading and metal trading in New Zealand?
Yes, we are. We were actually the first digital offering for exchanging gold, silver and platinum. So we launched that last year along with crypto and our Learn and Earn, which are educational courses where you can work through and learn about crypto coins and how investing with them works, and then earn coins back for doing the education pieces as well.
So worldwide, throughout all your markets, you have 50 million customers, I read. Is the profile of your customer young and tech savvy?
Yes, stereotypically, yes. However, what we're seeing in New Zealand is that we're definitely not necessarily skewing towards one age segment or what have you. So obviously it takes off with the young ones, and I think we see a lot more of the talking around it, social media, social payments, splitting bills when they're out at dinner together. But we're seeing a really wide range of ages utilise the app at the moment in New Zealand, and it's really taking off.
Right.
With all corners, just because we've got so many different features that resonate with different age groups too.
Okay. We've been talking in this episode about how Kiwi customers are really quite sticky, and the Reserve Bank has noted this, that Kiwi customers just don't really change banks. Sometimes they change their partners or their marriages, but they keep the same bank account. How are you enticing them, or how are you going to change that inertia?
Yeah, so my take on the market is, all of the banks look and smell pretty much the same. When you look at them, their features, their product sets that they have to offer are very, very similar. So they're competing by 0.01% of an interest rate or what have you. Whereas what we do is we look at, okay, what products are missing from the New Zealand market?
So you've been here for more than a year now. How many customers have signed up in that time?
Unfortunately, we can't talk about customer numbers specifically, but we've exceeded our growth expectations. We've had over 350 mil of transaction volume in New Zealand, which we're super proud of.
Right.
And we've actually, coming back to that product innovation, we've already delivered 18 products just within 17 months. So when was the last time we saw one of the other big banks do that?
Okay. When you were launching, you said you had 26,000 people on your wait list. So do you have more or less now?
Definitely more.
Okay. All right. Why do you want to become a registered bank here? Why aren't you just happy with what you're doing?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons for it. One is the customer trust. Two, we've got products and what have you. And three is we want to be held to the highest standards. So when we talk about trust, if you look at a bank license, taking care of a customer's deposits is a serious undertaking, and it's something that we take the responsibility of very seriously. So we want to make sure that we're held to that highest regulatory standard, and ensure that we can, show our customers that we've got all of the safeguards in place to look after their deposits in the right way.
Customer trust is important. In the UK, Revolut has recently been given a banking licence. It has also been the subject of a BBC Panorama investigation into its fraud prevention.
Last year, Action Fraud received almost 10,000 reports of fraud in which Revolut was named, 2,000 more than the bank with the most UK customers, Barclays.
For context, in New Zealand, we can't compare banks or financial entities in terms of the number of complaints. That's because if a complaint is made to the Financial Ombudsman Service, it does not name the company that has been complained about. You say that you want to be held to the highest level of regulatory supervision. Everybody is concerned about scams, frauds, all those kinds of things. And there has been media coverage by the BBC in the UK about Revolut topping the number of fraud complaints. How would you reassure New Zealand customers?
Yeah, so our New Zealand Revolut entity is separate and operates separately from some of our other counterparts across the world. But I would love to reassure Kiwis that we take fraud and scams and financial crime with the highest, most seriousness. Over 40% of Revolut employees worldwide are actually dedicated to fighting fraud and financial crime.
40% worldwide, did you say?
Correct, yes.
40%, okay. Yeah.
And it's quite big, yeah. So the other side of it is we don't look at fraud and scams as just a tick the box. It's not a compliance exercise that we're doing to satisfy regulators here in New Zealand. We actually treat it as a product innovation as well. So not only are we, ticking the boxes and making sure that we are adhering to the highest regulatory standards, but we're also developing new products that help to beat fraud and scams. An example of that in New Zealand was earlier this year, we launched AI scam protection features where using AI, we can start to resonate with, okay, is this activity normal of a consumer in the app? Or might they being talked through on the phone, how to transfer money for that dream Disney trip or what have you. And so then we actually have some prompts in the app that will help to guide the customer to get off the phone with the scammer without raising concern. So,
Right. So,
we definitely treat it as an innovation.
Well, is there a real battle here for neobanks, which Revolut is over in, say, Europe and the UK, to gain that trust with people? Because they're just worried that, maybe these aren't as trustworthy as the regular traditional banks.
I think in other markets, we've had other markets go first, I guess. Neobanking and fintechs are just only beginning really in New Zealand. We're only scratching the surface here. So it is a whole new experience that Kiwis haven't been utilising for the last 10, 15 years like they have in other markets. I think that digital inertia definitely comes with neobanks and what have you. And what I'd love to say to that is the digital platforms that we're all working off are so much more advanced than the traditional banks.
The barriers to becoming a bank in New Zealand are high, and there has been and there is a review of, say, the Deposit Takers Act at the moment by the Reserve Bank. And one of the things that's been directed to have a look at by the government is the level or the amount of capital that you need to become a bank. At the moment, it's $30 million. Is that too high a bar for Revolut?
So the capital required to become a bank is definitely significant. We're definitely committed to helping Kiwis get more from the money, and becoming a bank is one step into delivering that. So yes, we have met the RBNZ's requirements for our bank license application, and we're really excited to be working closely with them on
right.
that.
So you're telling me that you do have $30 million worth of capital sitting there in order to meet that requirement at the moment?
Correct, yes.
Okay. When do you think, or how long is it going to take for Revolut, do you think, to try and get this banking license? Because the last time one was granted was Kiwibank.
Yes, that's right. Many years ago.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't comment on the regulatory timelines. So we are not able to talk that through.
Okay. All right. Well, finally, what is Revolut's goal in New Zealand with the idea of becoming a registered bank?
If we look at Revolut's performance in other markets that were ripe for disruption, like we are in New Zealand, we can look at Ireland, where over 74% of Irish hold a Revolut account. So that's over 2/3 of their country. And, they've got similar population to us. Their banking system was a little bit stale, like ours. So we've definitely got our sights held high. So we are just really getting started here, and we can't wait to grow from strength to strength and work through this license application with the Reserve Bank.
Will customers put their trust in neobanks? They have in other markets, and they have across the Tasman. But according to Dom Pym, the co-founder of UpBank in Aussie, it's a different kind of trust.
I think there's a new type of trust that's been developed, since the advent of the iPhone. Whether it's an Android or an iPhone, the mobile phone is a portable computer in your pocket. So all you have to do is look at the home screen of anybody's phone. Who has their banking app on their home screen? What they have instead is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, maybe X, near Twitter. And so when you look at that, we said to ourselves, rather than trying to compete with the banks at all, forget about the banks. Don't even try and compete with them. Try and build trust with consumers in the same way that a social media app or a payment app or whatever the apps are that are on their home screen, those are the apps. Google Maps, for example. Now, that sort of trust is a really great way to sort of crack through and build the first instance of trust with the consumer, and then you start building on engagement. What you find over time is then you earn the trust to help them manage their money, to help them with financial well-being, to help them save, for the future.
So big banks, watch out, I guess is one message. But one last question for you. You're still, even though you're not an owner or a co-founder anymore, you've exited from Up, but you are still advising on their advisory board. That's correct?
I actually resigned from the advisory board recently, but I'm still the largest. I'm still the largest shareholder. So I have a vested interest in the outcome, and I also sit on the board of FinTech Australia.
Yep.
So for us, it's about actually lobbying the government and trying to get regulations improved in order to open up the market for competition, in order to deliver better value for consumers. And I think that sort of lens is what I'm looking at now as I'm moving into the next phase of my career.
Just finally, though, I mean, because you've still got skin in the game, would Up consider New Zealand as a market?
Yeah, I think Up's been ultra focused on the Australian market, similar to Monzo in its first few years in the UK, whereas Revolut, for example, took a totally different path. That was raise lots of capital and expand into 30 plus countries. I think they're both valid business models, but what we're trying to do is dominate and win market share. We expect in the next couple of years for Up to be the number one bank in Australia, to overtake all the big four and be the number one bank in Australia for under 35 market. And we think we can achieve that in less than 10 years from launch. So for us, that's a bigger focus than expanding into other countries, but never say never. As I said, it's ripe for disruption. I think there's 3 or 4 players on the cusp in New Zealand of either doing partnerships with banks or getting their own banking license. And so I think it's a very exciting times ahead.
And that wraps up this episode of the NBR Podcast. Thanks to the content production team, Jake Latham and Joseph Hisayasu. This was our last regular episode of the NBR Podcast for 2024. But don't fret, we are launching a summer series to keep you company over the break, where you'll get to meet the fabulous journos behind the major stories on nbr.co.nz. I'm Simon Shepherd. We'll catch you then.